You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Conversation. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. This edition will discuss the Fintechs and a thriving Nigerian digital economy. We meet to have this conversation is Dr. Stanley Jacobs, President, Fintech Association of Nigeria. It's great to have you, Dr. Stanley Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's begin with the Investment and Securities Act 2025, which was signed into law by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This has been described as a game changer. And that several months ago, the Fintech Association of Nigeria hosted a forum with the Securities and Exchange Commission to discuss how this will shape the fintech industry. From that conversation and looking at what's happening now, how is this going to create opportunities for the fintech industry, the capital market, and at large the economy?
Thank you very much, Otto. The Investments and Securities Act 2025 represents a watershed moment for the Nigerian fintech ecosystem and also for the capital market in general. As someone that is deeply involved in this space, I can confidently say that this legislation is super transformative. How do we see it and what does it mean for us? First, the Act formally recognizing digital assets as securities creates an unprecedented opportunity for the space. For the first time, cryptocurrencies, tokens, blockchain-based instruments now have some legal form of standing, bringing them under the Security and Exchange Commission oversight. This regulatory clarity remains it eliminates that fear, that uncertainty that was previously plaguing that sector of financial services. So I'm particularly happy about it. And I'm glad you mentioned that when that act was introduced, the Director General of SEC, Dr. Agama, in his magnanimity, gave us that platform to be able to educate the public on what this act truly means for operators, for consumers, and for the market in general. So we're very glad and we are in very active support of SEC on this one. When you also look at it from the capital market activities and how it creates some opportunities, first you see that this is an opportunity now for us to see improved financial inclusion because the virtual and the digital assets can now attract tech-savvy youthful population, which represents over 50% of our population. Also, there will be product diversification, right? Of course, because enabling other non-traditional bond and equities is very critical at this point.
Very, very critical at this point. And we just hope to see the traction in that regard. Let's look at first half of the year 2025. We've seen how the year has gone. But I'd like to get the investment climate. How has it been for the fintech industry in Nigeria? What has been happening? Has there been significant improvement in investments? And what are the optics?
The first half of 2025 presents a complex, but I think an ultimately positive picture for Nigeria's fintech space. While we see in the global space that the fintech are facing headwinds in terms of investment declining and a lot of other things, Nigeria continues to demonstrate some resilience and growth in the space. We've seen some improvement. For example, this industry has grown an impressive 70% year on year. When you see that we expanded from 255, I think, mapped companies in January 2024 to over 430 companies in February 2025. This growth is particularly significant and something we should be happy about, for considering the headwinds that the global space is facing. And also looking at the challenging global investment climate, to have us grow from 255 to over 400 is quite commendable. And when you do a reality check on the funding space, you will also see that we attracted substantial investment despite this headwind. Nearly $400 million in 2024. And we've been able to see some moderation from the other years where we had far more investment. But in summary, I think the fintechs continue to dominate the space. Over 70% of our total equity funding in 2024 came from the fintech space. And of course, this is, we hope it will diversify, but it's also something we can commend. And we've got some mega deals last year that we should be happy about. For example, the deal with Money Point, the 110 million announcement. That's something that was very big for us, not just for Nigeria, but for Africa. And also we've seen the ecosystem maturing, more of the investments now going into growth and late stage funding, as against the early stage experimentation that we used to have in the years past.
Yes. You talked about diversification, so that's preempting my next question. What are the trends in the fintech industry that you can track currently? And what about the issue of diversifying beyond payments? I know that payments space has been massive in fintech, to other sectors, which you and your predecessors and other key leaders in the fintech industry has been advocating for, going to agriculture, transportation, healthcare, areas that will unlock opportunities in the economy.
Thank you very much, Otto. This diversification is a topic that we will continue to talk about. And I think we're not saying it enough. But clearly, I feel that the successes that we have recorded in terms of fintech diversification is undertold. Because when you look at it carefully, over the years, we've seen fintechs unpack financial services from what traditional banking used to look like. So when you say sectoral diversification, we are currently in that phase, looking at our fintech ecosystem. And we are seeing a significant expansion in two sectors. And even though we are still at the starting point, but some sectors have seen deeper diversification than others. If you look at healthcare, which we now say health tech,
yes.
Of course, it's healthcare fintech, but it's health tech, right? That's what we've nicknamed them. You can see that we've seen innovative solutions in terms of the health insurance technology, driven by insurance tech, insurtech. We've seen where telemedicine, a lot of apps and solutions now allowing you to run your consultation and diagnosis digitally. We've also seen cases of healthcare financing through digital. You don't get to meet anyone. You're in need of healthcare financing, and you go to an app, you are connected to someone who is able to give you that finance over a period of time. And we've seen companies developing streamlined insurance policy and premium claims management system on the app. I can't remember when last I called my own health HMO, they call the Health Maintenance Organization. Everything happens on the app, to be honest, whether you're doing it in Nigeria or with a foreign health insurance provider. When you also look at diversification, you see it from education.
Yes, edutech or edtech.
So I know they call it education technology, but edutech is another sector where we've seen an intersection of fintech and education, and it's growing very fast. Of course, I remember some years back when Bumi Lawson became the pioneer CEO for EdFin.
Yes, EdFin.
Particularly excited about that because that was the first educational microfinance institution. But that intersection is growing stronger. We're seeing platforms offering educational loans. EdFin pioneered that. We're seeing payment solutions for institutions and financial literacy programs, right? And we've also seen programs that addresses access to education financing and financial inclusion. So we've also realized that having to use technology to fund education is not only just about fintech, commercial or investment, but also we need to see it from a point of social impact. And when you move to agriculture, agri-tech too, and that's the financing agricultural technology, you will see that there's another huge potential there. And you know, at the beginning, I said that some of them are more deeply diversified than the others. I see agri-tech is another sector that is coming up slowly, but we're seeing more on health tech, edu tech. Agri-tech is showing you how we can use technology to address the $9 billion SME financing gap in that space. And these include how we can solve supply chain financing, farmers marketplace, invoice financing, agri-product, and in fact, just generally digital platforms that connect farmers to buyers, credit, equipment and manufacturers, including global agricultural bodies. How do they converge in one platform? We think fintechs are also making this possible, not just in Nigeria, but globally. We have the area of transportation. Beyond the traditional ride hailing, this is one sector where I think it comes top for me, given that we've also seen unicorns come out of this space. But the area of ride hailing, where you have the traditional ride hailing payment, we see integrated payment solutions. Of course, you've seen what Uber is doing. You've seen the Nigerian born ride hailing fintechs and what they've done, even with attracting fintechs funding. We've seen now not just making payments for transport sector simplified, but offering credit, insurance, savings for drivers and passengers. This is something very, very significant. If you come to Lagos, we have the likes of Tap and Pay that have always been there. And, so it's really good. Doing a reality check on diversification, I think that while diversification is happening, it is important for us to acknowledge that payments and other forms of financial services, the business, especially in the SME and corporate space, they still dominate our ecosystem. We cannot discount the fact that payment has to happen for most of these other sectors to see the light. So the largest vertical will remain business payment and cross-border transactions for now. And today, I think we have over 50 fintechs in that space, which of course I don't think is a bad thing, but it looks more like that's the foundation of everything. Of course, credit and lending will follow, spending solutions and others will follow. Regardless of what you call it, health tech, agri-tech, prop tech, food tech, whatever you call it, payments is at the underlying base of it all.
Let's look at the regulatory environment. It's very important. Regulations are critical to growth. They could be inimical, but they're also critical to growth. How would you describe the engagement of the Fintech Association of Nigeria with regulators, ensuring that we see more advocacy for the industry? Has it been effective?
So I think that our engagement with regulators and the governments, because regulators sometimes, I always say, as a fintech, there is this three broad spectrum that you must see everything from when it comes to compliance. Regulations, where you have the regulators, legislation, where you have government, and standards, where you have the global standards, local, like the NDPR, PCI, DSS, ISOs. Every fintech that wants to succeed must at the same time have their eyes on these three spectrums. So, but I think as Fintech Association of Nigeria, our engagement in these three spectrums have been both proactive and effective. And our advocacy continues to evolve from one aspect to another. And if you follow closely the changes that were brought to the association in the past few months, you will see that it's a whole different kind of engagement across board. But most importantly, our significant achievement has been in the area of collaborative policy development, how we work closely with regulators or with government or with these standards to come up with some policies. There's an ISO that will be enforced shortly by the end of this year in the country. And we're working very closely with the parties involved to ensure that the fintechs are ready, operationally ready to take this on. In the past, we've partnered with SEC to develop the fintech adoption roadmap for the capital market. We're doing something with NICOM on the InsurTech roadmap. So these are not things, and if you look at it, these are not even things around payments. These are things that are meant to support diversification, right? And we are also taking what we call a multi-regulator approach. If you know of the Regulator Forum, Regulator Forum brings together different regulators, vast spectrum of regulators, keep them engaged, and they can speak to the operators on one round table and get to interact on how various policies are working and how it is impacting the market in real life. So we maintain active dialogue with all our relevant regulators, from CBN to SEC to NICOM to NIDA to the Data Protection Board to FCCPC, whatever, just name them. There are so many, to NIMC and co. We have that, and we're lucky to have them on the Regulators Forum, which usually is co-chaired by the president of Fintech NGR and a regulator representative. We think that this comprehensive approach ensures our members' interests are represented across the different regulatory spectrum, not just within traditional financial services, but also in some of these diversified areas that we have mentioned.
Under your leadership, you are driving what we call the P.I.E initiative. So we say the pie, when you have to take a piece of a pie, it's always interesting. Can you expatiate on how this is repositioning the fintech industry?
So I think, thank you, Otto, and I didn't know I'll have an opportunity to discuss this, but primarily the pie is something that is very close to my heart, and I'm particularly happy that both at the governing council level and at the board of trustee level, there is tremendous support in the execution of our PI agenda. PI means participation, innovation, and expansion. So we needed to relate it to something you can eat, so it stays every day. So every time we have to have a meeting, we need to have a meeting, we start with that pie in front of the cover so that you see some pie. But when you delve into it, you will see that it's significantly important to repositioning Fintech NGR. First, we discovered in terms of participation that we needed more people to participate. We needed not just more people, we needed ownership, stakeholder ownership. We didn't want a situation where unless you are in the governing council, you're visible. We wanted the situation where Fintech NGR becomes a platform. Whether you are a leader in the association or you are just a member, your voice is equally heard and your impact is equally felt. So participation became a key factor. Innovation for us was both internal and external. Innovation internal is how do we ensure that we revamp all our systems and have complete end-to-end digitized interaction with our members and the companies that are within our ecosystem. On the external part of innovation, it was more for us around how do we ensure, some of the fintechs that you have today, smaller fintechs, they roll out solutions. The biggest problem they usually have is how can they commercialize it? So we are targeting key innovations and how do we give them a platform where people can see what you have done, people can buy what you have done, and then maybe at some point have a sandbox that people can play with. We know there's a regulatory sandbox. Maybe we needed one for our innovation as an association, and we are working towards it as part of the core of our agenda. Expansion for us was how do we ensure that Fintech NGR is not just that association that is known mostly in Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt, but everywhere, both across the 36 states and the FCT and across every nation in Africa. The core objective was, even for Nigerians that are not living in Nigeria, we wanted to create a platform that is positively impacting, that they will crave to join from wherever they are. And that was where expansion came from. It doesn't necessarily just imply geographic expansion, but it also means expansion in terms of attracting Nigerians and non-Nigerians from wherever they are. And we've seen that recently that is impacting in the kind of engagements that we are having. And for us to fully do more on the PI agenda, the first thing we did when we were putting together our governing council was how do we make sure that even non-elected members of the governing council can participate in governing council committees? How do we make sure that we can set up what we call communities of practice, COPs, that is purely member-led? So these communities of practice made up of domain leaders and four domain, a coordinator and four domain leaders. That's 5 per domain. There are 5 domains. And they are looking at critical areas of interest, from new technology, which I talked about, and how they are being introduced, supporting it, to policy, to financial inclusion, to new industry advocacy, economic inclusion. So it was core areas that they are looking at, and these domain leaders are not governing council members. So it was like having members of the association drive an agenda that will not just impact the association, but to impact the industry and also give them a full sense of ownership. I'm particularly excited about this. I don't want to go, I can go on and on till tomorrow, but I'll just pause here.
Very important. What's the outlook for the fintech industry globally? And of course, as it affects Africa and Nigeria, looking at current uncertainties and activities around the globe. And what are you doing as the association to ensure that members continue to strengthen data protection and cybersecurity measures?
I think the outlook for the Nigerian fintech industry in 2025, as economists usually say, let me use it for fintech now, is it remains cautiously optimistic, right? Despite the significant global and the challenges we've had in the ecosystem, right? So when you see the issues of uncertainties, we talked about funding. Funding will continue to be something that is important. So funding will be something that is continuing to be important for us. And of course, we've seen what we've done with our resilience, not to report that. Of course, the macroeconomic reforms, having stability in the economy, stability in the currency, is also going to play a key factor. That's tied into government initiatives and all that is going on. It will really affect how the industry stabilizes and grow. The issue of data protection and cybersecurity leadership will continue to come up. And in terms of that space, recently we've had that announcement that open banking will go live in August this year, if I'm correct. And that, of course, that will now mean more conversations around data sharing, data handling. So I think it's going to bring more to everyone's education on the importance and how these things will work for us. So it's going to be a very engaging time when it comes to data protection and how consumers will become more aware on how their data should be handled. But overall, I will always say, while we are growing as an industry, we should just grow responsibly, right? And continue to have our eyes on those 3 spectrums: regulation, legislations, and standards.
Yes, very important. And as we wrap up, every year we have the Fintech Week. What should we expect this year, 2025?
Yeah, so I think the ecosystems are funny, right? I like what's happening. The Fintech Week for this year, my Vice President, Dr. Jamila, she's chairing the committee for Nigerian Fintech Week, and I'm particularly impressed with what they are putting together. For me, I wish they could release a trailer for what people would expect, but let's watch it out. Well, mainly it's going to come totally differently. We are hoping that this year's Fintech Week will be different. We are going to see a Fintech Week that's going to happen concurrently in different cities, at least 6 different cities. You'll have people seated, not just what we have in Lagos. You're going to have international participation, day dedicated to the sub-region. It's just going to be something very different, right? When you talk about symphony and orchestration, we want to make good music when it comes to bringing the tech players together. And I'm hoping at some point in a few days from now, Dr. Jamila will be sharing some of those key insights. I can't wait to see it, but I know that it's something that will be quite promising and at the same time rewarding for our stakeholders.
Definitely. Orchestration and symphony are very important, and that's critical. Just like you said, regulation, policy, and standards are those key things that FinTech will focus on. But a very interesting conversation, Dr. Stanley Jacobs, President, Fintech Association of Nigeria. Thanks for this very enlightening session on fintechs and the quest for a thriving Nigerian digital economy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otto. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, viewers, that will be all for this conversation. On this Economy and Politics conversation, we had Dr. Stanley Jacobs, President of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, discuss fintechs and the quest for a thriving Nigerian digital economy. If you want to get further insights on this conversation, log on to our website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching and bye for now.